Okay, so I went ahead and I cut quite a few extra pieces of my foliage dies and a few more of my daisy head leaves, and I went ahead and cut a couple extra of the bitty blossoms and one more of the daisy head, the small daisy head die. Now I want to show you guys how I made the flowers on my card. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how to make one of the bitty blossoms, this big one here, because I used the same exact technique for making the medium and the small blossom. So I'll show you how I made that one, and then I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how I made this orange flower here using the smallest daisy head die. We're going to start off with this one. So what I did, and I've kind of already started on this one, was I cut in between each petal. Some of the sections have little bits of paper connecting them, and I want to curl each petal forward so I don't need them to be together. So I'm going to do that on this one, finish on this one, and then I'll do the other one as well. Okay, so now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a dauber, an ink dauber, and I'm going to use some rich cocoa memento ink, and I am going to ink the edges of both of these petals. And I actually do this for all of the flowers that I put together in my bouquet. Alright, so now that my edges are inked, what I do now is I have a piercing tool that's kind of the perfect, has the perfect width around it, and I take it and I curl up each individual petal. I kind of hold it in place and then follow it along as I curl it. Okay, now I've got all those curled. What I'm going to do is I'm going to layer these two together, and you can use whatever glue you have, but I have some hot glue hot and ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. I'm going to put it on top. I like to layer my pieces so that one petal on top is in between two petals underneath it. Just kind of gives it a little bit more depth and lifelike look to it. Okay, and so that's my flower. Now, what I did for the ones in my bouquet was I put a sweet little button in it with some baker's twine sticking out. I just wanted it to give a little bit more texture to the flower. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I basically just grabbed a button, any button will do, and two pieces of about 1.5 inches of baker's twine. I don't know if you can see that. I actually took the white part of one of the pieces off because I did want some white in there, but I didn't want it to overwhelm it. I wanted more brown. So what I'm going to do is I folded it in half, kind of twisted it at the end there, and I'm going to take a little bit of hot glue, and this I would use hot glue for. It's just so much quicker. It dries so much quicker than any other glue. Put a little bit right in the center. Okay, and so that's how I made my flower using the small daisy heads die. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how I made the large bitty blossoms die. Now, as with the daisy heads, I inked the edges in memento ink, rich cocoa, just around the petals for this one, just around the tops. The sides are a little too little for me to concern myself with inking them. Okay, now that they're nice and inked up, what I did was, once again, is I took my piercing tool and I'm going to roll it inwards, okay, so that my embossing is on the inside, but also when the petals are furled out, you can see them. Now before I roll it inwards, I'm actually going to take each petal and I'm going to curl them outwards. Okay, so as you can see, it's kind of has a curled outward curve to it. So I'm going to go ahead and start rolling my center through, and this one I actually use a dry embossing tool because it's got a little bit of a smaller shaft to it and creates a smaller, closer, tighter circle. So I just did that to get it started. You don't have to use it, but I find it to be easy. And also you could go ahead and put a little bit of glue around the inside rim of it if you wanted to, but I like to kind of shift my flower once it's all together, and so I find it a lot easier to be able to do that if it's not already glued. So I'm just twirling it and turning it on its side there. I'm just going to go all the way around. It's not super tight. I'm just kind of rolling it as natural as it will go. Okay, so as you can see, I'm done. Now I've got this last little big circle, and that's actually the base, and so I'm going to put a little bit of glue on that, and that's where all of my petals are going to sit, right in there. And it still has a little bit of give with my petals do, that I can kind of shape them to look how I want them to. Alright, and that's my beautiful rose. And that's exactly what I did to create the red roses that I have here, flowers, the pink and the yellow. So I inked the edges on both the pinks and the yellow, the medium and the small bitty blossoms. And then I furled the petals out, even with these little ones I did, and then just rolled it inward to create those flowers. Okay, so what I want to show you now is how I put my flowers onto a stem. So you can see here I have all of the flowers. I pre-did them for the card. My roses, my bitty blossom roses, and pink one, the yellow one, and then my daisy head one that I put together. So what I did was I started off with some floral wire, and I had this at home. If I probably could go out and get some thicker, already green stems, but it's what I had, so it's what I used. And so what I did was I took it and I bent it in half, cut it, just so it'd be a little easier to wind together. And I put them together because it was a little thin by itself, and I wanted them to be a little thicker. So as I hold them together, I'm going to use some floral tape, and I'm going to wind them, or wind this around them to create my green stem. Now if you've never worked with floral tape before, it kind of feels, I don't know, it's not tacky, it just has, you can tell it has some sort of finish to it. It's not sticky right away, but as you twirl it and turn it and pull it, you can then feel the adhesive coming through, and it sticks. So I am just turning this around the wire, spinning it and pulling it with my thumb and forefinger. Okay, so what I did was I took my stem and my multi-tool, and I bent my wire and created a little loop, just like that, at the top, and that is what I'm going to glue to the back of my flower here. You can see how I did that when they were all done the same, where I just had glue and I glued them to the back. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Put some glue in the bottom of my daisy head flower. Just a little dab will do. And then I'm just going to place this right in the midst of that glob of hot glue. And let it sit there for just a minute while it dries and sets. The piercing tool is great for more than one thing. It acts as my little finger. Okay, so basically I let this dry and then I'm good to go. Now you'll notice that this one I've attached a leaf to it. Now just how I attached this wire to the back of the flower, I attached little strands of wire to the backs of each leaf. And I did that so that I then could go back and wrap the leaf around the stem of the flower. And basically I put it together real close, kind of wherever I wanted it to be. And I took this and I wound it around my stem. And it's as simple as that. I didn't glue it or anything. It's wire, and so it bends and holds its shape really easily. And so then now I have my little stem with a leaf.